Welcome to Session 5 in our series, Estate Planning Solutions for Families. This is a really important session, and I think that you're going to get a lot out of it, and you're going to be really surprised when you hear some of the subject matter. In today's session, you're going to learn exactly what digital assets are, why it's so important to protect them, and how to protect them. Now, John has done a lot of research about this, and he's really an expert in this particular field, so he'll be doing the bulk of the session today. Are you ready? Let's get started.
So what are digital assets? It's a new term, but it's one you're going to become very familiar with today. Social media, Facebook, Pinterest, Google+, Twitter, a lot of people have all of these things, but it's more than that. It's all of your digital assets. So what other assets are there? Email accounts, website domains. Do you own a website? Web admin credentials. And we're going to talk about credentials. Those are your username and your password. In the industry, those are called your credentials. Those get you into those different websites. So if I say credentials, it is your username and password. Any information on your computer or other device. If you don't assign that to somebody to get in there and do that, then they're illegally breaking in to your computer. And it's everything. It's everything on your laptop, your home computer, your iPad, your mobile device, whatever it may be. You're trying to protect everything that you have on there. Everything that you have on there is an asset for you. You use that for personal life, for work, whatever it is. You want to make sure that that stuff stays with the family. Very important. Future login credentials. You want to plan for future login credentials. You may be 30-year-old looking at this and going, well, gosh, what about the future? You want to protect it through the verbiage in your trust that any and all future login credentials and information are protected by your trust as well. And that you have somebody, your personal agent or your estate attorney, that has access to those things. Here's exactly what is in our trust when it comes to digital assets. Take a second and read through that. That top part will really spell out stuff so you know everything that's going on. Electronic communication sent or received, file sharing accounts, financial accounts, banking accounts. There's so much in there, and this paragraph really sums up all of those things, and this is the verbiage that's in the trust. That paragraph at the bottom, this is the secret for securing it. And we'll read through that. If a trustee locates a written document signed by the survivor of us stating our wishes about the disposition of our digital assets and their access, handling, distribution, and disposition, we request that the trustee be guided by those wishes. We're going to come back to that bottom one because it's really key in sewing this up into a nice little package. So why do you need to protect them? Let's talk about what's happening in America right now. And I don't think many other countries are up to speed too. So if you're from another country watching this, you need to think through and you need to find out what's happening in your country, in your state. Right now in America, federal lawmakers are sitting on a bill that would make a decision as to what happens with a person's digital assets should they be incapacitated or worse. They've been sitting on it for a long time, and they really haven't done anything about it. They keep coming up with more self-interest stuff to work on these days, but they're not doing that work for you or I to save that. And today people are going to become incapacitated or die, and their family's going to be freaking out because they don't have what they need to legally get into anybody's digital assets. They can't get onto their emails, they can't get into their accounts, they can't do anything by law. They're actually breaking and entering. So what's happening at the state level? Well, last time we checked, which was recently, there was only 5 states that had enacted any laws regarding digital assets. And only one of those states really did something where they just talked about emails, that the credentials for a major email account could go to the heirs and that they should have that. The other 4 states, it was murky what they were even trying to say. Why haven't they done anything? Well, the state lawmakers are waiting for the federal lawmakers to do something so that they can either adopt that language or adopt part of it and draft new language themselves. But right now they're not doing it. We live in Oregon. I can remember when we were interviewing estate attorneys, and I said, what about digital assets? What do you do? And that person said, we don't have to worry about that because Oregon enacted a law 2 years ago. And I had to point out to that lawyer that, no, it's sitting in Senate. They haven't done anything. And we just came through another legislative session in our state, and they still haven't done anything. So waiting for the Fed to do something before they do something. So right now, none of your digital assets are legally covered by federal or state law. So let's bring the third part of this problem in. Website lawyers. You know, according to website lawyers, when you clicked that terms of use button, they consider that a private contract between you and the website. And they have no legal obligation at this time to turn over any login credentials that you may have. So what happens if something happens to you? And you have a lot. I know Terry, for her business, for my business, for what we're doing here, in our personal lives, we have over 80 login credentials for different websites and things that we use. So what would happen right now is that one of us would have to lawyer up, and we would have to go to that website lawyer, submit a death certificate, and plead our case as to why they should relinquish those login credentials. Fortunately for us, we keep all of our login credentials, so we don't have to go through that. But so many people don't keep track of their login credentials. They're on their phone somewhere, they're on a piece of paper somewhere. We're going to talk about collecting those because it's important, because if you have your login credentials, it still falls into that possession is 9/10 of the law. You want to possess those things. So this is what's happening across our nation. Facebook, they recently acquiesced, because before they would not turn over the login credentials. And you can Google up, there's many videos on there with parents that are absolutely pleading with Facebook on YouTube to give them the credentials. They just want the pictures. They want those conversations. They want to memorialize that. They need to pull it down. And Facebook recently put in what they call it's a legacy section that you can go into in your settings, and you can designate another Facebook user, and should something happen to you, then they have the ability to go to Facebook and say, look, they designated me, and Facebook will give that one person the credentials. You know, it wasn't too long ago in Texas, there was a big fire at a fertilizer plant, and multiple calls went out, many firemen. Well, the whole thing exploded and killed many of those firemen. And it was a few days later, and you might have heard this on the news, they were so distraught because they could not get the login credentials to their Facebook. The person that had been administering the Facebook page had died. And they couldn't memorialize it. They couldn't communicate with their community. They'd set up a good network through Facebook with alerts and what's happening in the station and all those money. They couldn't get it anything. You know, you would think they would just turn it over, but they didn't. This was prior to the legacy thing. And Facebook is the only one that we know of that's done anything like this. So if I look at the 80 websites that Terry and I look like, you know, what do you have? How many do you use? And if nobody had your login credentials, that's a long row to hoe, right? I mean, somebody's going to do that with that many different lawyers. How much is that going to cost? That would eat up your entire estate, probably, just trying to close out website accounts and those kinds of things. Just critical that you understand this backstory of to what's not happening in our country, and that this is happening to people every day right now. You have to keep your login credentials, and you have to give legal authority through your trust or your will, or however your attorney sets that up, that somebody has those credentials and access to them, and that verbiage needs to be in your estate plan. So let's go back to what we had in our estate plan. Remember that paragraph at the bottom there? It's that letter. It's that letter, that signed document. And what we have done is we have written a letter, computerized, to our son that has a list of all of our login credentials and what websites they go to, personal, business, everything, with an explanation of what we want him to do with those. Of course, many login credentials, many websites that we work with, all you need to do is put a long password on there so nobody ever hacks it, and just let it go. But there's others like banking and business and those kinds of things that your trustee, your agent is going to want to have access to. So we have the signed document that says that we want him to do these things. And it's written into our trust that we are authorizing that trustee to be guided by those wishes. None of these websites are going to know that he gets in there and does that. They just disappear. We don't have to go through lawyers. We don't have to do anything. He can close out the ones that we've instructed that he doesn't need, and we can give instructions and he can carry out our wishes on those other ones. So many times people don't have, and maybe you've seen this, where you've got a friend or somebody that you know has passed on, but their Facebook page is still up. It's probably because the family didn't have access to the credentials to get into it. So it just keeps coming up. I know we've got one friend, their birthday comes up every year. Or gosh, they passed this milestone. Well, you know what? He died 5 years ago. So there again, we can't leave these things up. If that friend doesn't have a very good password on that Facebook account, eventually it will be hacked. And there are people out there that will hack a page like this, and they will say outlandish, horrible things about that person on that page. We need to avoid that. Make sure you have all the login credentials. So how are we going to protect them? We've got that signed letter authorizing our trustee. We've got a list of all websites and login credentials. And when you do this, if you're just writing it on paper somewhere and you cross it out when you change the password, it's time to move over and get electronic. Take a Word document or a spreadsheet document and just start listing those out. It's the web address, username, password, and then just go on to the next one. Directions on what to do with these. So social media, pictures, emails, others, what else do you have? List those all down. It's so very, very important.
Thanks, John. We have just completed session 6 on how to protect your digital assets. And next we will be doing another session on the same sort of subject matter, but what you will learn is more on securing your information. As always, we invite you to ask questions by contacting us at alegacyundone.com. Until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.